Good morning guys, what's up? I hope you're all having an awesome Today I thought I would do a video that's completely different to a lot of other ones, but one I've wanted to make for a very long time now. And that is to try show the rest of the world, the rest of my subscribers that watch me from the US, from Europe, from South Africa, from all these incredible places, and teach them more about the almighty Ford Falcon. So I'm going to go to a nice little spot just down the road where I kind of know it's all nice and quiet, and that way I can walk around this car right here and show the rest of the world what they were missing out on when they didn't get the Ford Falcon. Alright guys, so we have arrived just down the road to a nice little quiet road that I kind of film on a lot of the time. And this right here is my 2008 Ford FG Falcon. Now for a lot of you guys in Australia, this is probably going to be like the most boring video ever, because we're just talking about the fact that this is a complete taxi in Australia. But over the past few months, especially since I got the R33 Skyline, I've developed a pretty decent following from the USA, from the UK, just from all of those awesome places that know about the Skyline, but then again they don't know about this car right here. Now from the people in the USA, you might know or have heard about these cars originally from the 1960s Ford Falcons. They were originally actually produced in America, only the first two versions, and then the Australians took them on and basically made them better for Australian roads and our climate and just what we use them for, and then it has evolved down the line to what is right in front of us today. This one right here is the FG Falcon. This is the 7th edition to the Falcon lineup. And what I wanted to talk about today was the fact that this right here, I believe, is the car that the rest of the world missed out on, 100%. Whether we're talking in terms of 6-cylinder turbo-powered Japanese cars or the massive big V8s in America, no matter what scene you're involved in, I honestly think that there is a Falcon package, trim and engine-wise, that you guys will absolutely come to love and wish that you owned. Now, I am mainly going to be basically relating all the information to you guys with this model right here, the FG. And this is going to go on from probably about the BA till the FGX, which is around about 2002 to 2016. Now, the year 2002, the 2016 timeline is a very small portion of their 56-year lifespan for the Falcon, but it is the most relatable to sort of everyone that's into modern day sports cars or even older muscle cars in general. And I think that those years there are going to be the most relatable for whether you like American muscle cars or Japanese sports cars or basically anything to do with cars in general. Now this year of the FG right here either came out with a 4-cylinder turbo, a 6-cylinder NA, a 6-cylinder turbo, or a 5.4 litre V8 engine. Now a lot of you guys might have seen on the channel my good mate Max, who's just recently supercharged his V8, and he made a very comfortable 530 horsepower on a completely stock engine, which is absolutely wicked. My car in particular right here comes with the almighty Barra Turbo, which is a 4 litre inline 6. So let's quickly open up the bonnet and show the rest of the world the engine that you guys missed out on. So this right here for you Americans and Europeans and everyone that has not seen this engine right here, this is Ford's dual overhead cam 4 litre inline 6. Now a lot of people actually think that Ford named this engine after the Barracuda, but it's actually the Barramundi that they named this engine after. Now there is a couple of little running jokes as to how the Barra sort of got named and everything. The biggest one was a joke that they apparently used to say in the Ford factory, which is what do Commodore drivers and fishermen have in common? The fact that they both can't catch a Barra. That's just, yeah, apparently that's a thing, but I don't know, who knows. So first of all, let's all talk about why the Barra engine is so iconic. So the Barra engine was produced between 2002 and 2016 and put in all the cars from the Ford Falcon, the Ford Falcon Ute, and the Territory. And it was introduced as a big, strong, reliable, and very efficient 6-cylinder for all of their Australian-made cars. Now, in terms of comparing it to, let's say, the RB25, RB26, 1JZ, 2JZ, all of those really iconic inline 6 turbo engines, this engine here is extremely tall, extremely long, and extremely heavy. So as I was saying before, the Ford Barra came as an NA or a turbo. Now the NAs were producing, I think in the early 2000s, were producing, I don't know, probably around the 200 horsepower mark. And the most powerful factory turbo Barra that they made was a 370 kilowatt variant that was in one of the last cars to come off the production line, which was the XR6 Sprint. And for all of you guys wondering what 370 kilowatt is in horsepower, it's around about 503 horsepower. Now, not only was the Ford Falcon and the Barra engine produced basically to make decent power and be very efficient, It was also made to be very, very extremely reliable, with tens of thousands of these cars being produced to go towards the Australian taxi service. This car right here, even though the engine is so strong and can easily make 600 horsepower on a completely stock engine with a few little mods like valve springs, head studs and oil pump gears, you can easily make 600 horsepower out of these engines. They were also made for the Australian taxi service, so they are a dime a dozen in Australia. There are so many of these engines around, and most of the taxis out there also came as an LPG variant, so there was an NA version, a turbo version, and also a gas version as well. One of the best things about the Barra engine is its ability to make bulk torque. Even stock, these turbo cars make around 435 foot-pounds of torque at 2,600 RPM. My particular car right now, making 620 horsepower on a stock bottom end, is still making 850 Newton meters of torque. So putting this Barra engine into comparison with, let's say, a 1JZ, 2JZ, RB25, RB30, RB26, you really do see and start to understand why these are such a common swap here in Australia and New Zealand. Their ability to make bulk torque and bulk power when boost is added just makes these such an awesome swap for a lot of car builders and tuners out there. So let's now talk about the looks of these cars right here. Now they look absolutely amazing. Ford, especially in the Falcon, were notorious for making these really amazing colors. This right here being breeze green, but there are so many awesome colors these cars came out in. But not only that, being a two-wheel drive with a factory LSD, 6-speed automatic or 6-speed manual, these cars were loved by Australians everywhere. And yes, they are a bit on the heavier side, 1.8 tons in comparison to like 1.3 ton Skylines out there. These cars still produce great power for the weight that they have. So yes, I think it's time now to start it up and take it for a bit of a rip. So I know this little microphone here is going to be a little bit weird to look at, but please forgive me. I know it's very weird, but... So let's talk about what the Falcon had to offer as sort of like a package for anyone that was keen to, you know, let's just say buy this car, tune it up and just see how you go making some bulk and easy power. My particular car has an intercooler, exhaust system, dump pipe, high flow cat, also has different intercooler piping, injectors, turbo side intake, just some very, very simple mods, including valve springs and head studs, but not oil pump gears just yet. And my car is sitting at a very comfortable 620 horsepower and 850 Newton meters of torque. However, there has been some stock bottom end Barras out there that have actually got over 700 horsepower, which is awesome. Oh yeah, and I got a screamer. So let's talk about what the Falcon had to actually offer as a package. So the cars came out either as a sedan or a ute, and they came out as a rear-wheel drive automatic 6-speed or a manual 6-speed. There were some variants, if you were to go NA, you have a 5-speed, or possibly even the B series had 4-speed and 5-speed manual variants. But all in all, the FGs came out predominantly with a 6-speed auto and a 6-speed manual. Now it is a bit wet, so it won't grip up, but... As I said, they are a little bit heavier than what your average sports car would be, coming in at 1.8 tons. However, this in terms of like, let's just use the Ford Mustang for example. These cars here actually came in at 4.83 meters long, whereas the Mustang actually came in smaller at 4.78. So they're actually a little bit bigger than the Mustang, which is pretty crazy as well. But I guess you actually do get some usable rear seats. These cars are extremely comfy to drive. They came with a really great driveline. Like my driveline is still completely stock. And yeah, it probably won't last forever, but at 620 horsepower, there are a lot of people that I know that completely stock drivelines. It's awesome. So in comparison to, let's say, the Mustang, these things here made some great power. And the V8 cars, as I said before, with Max's supercharged car, you know, you get 530 horsepower, and I think it made around 600 Newton meters of torque. It's a brilliant car. So yes, looking at it as a car in whole, it's a good looking car. It came out with some really great engines, being the Barra 6, the 5.4 litre Boss V8, and then also the supercharged Coyote when you go to 2011 and onwards. They came out with some awesomely reliable and very powerful and tunable engines. So I guess the big question is, why was this car never sent to other countries? Why wasn't it ever sent to America for you guys to have a play around with? Or why wasn't it sent to Europe so you guys had, you know, a big, powerful Australian muscle car? In actual fact, a G6E Turbo was actually sent over to one of the Ford America directors because he said that it was one of the most perfect cars he has ever driven. So why wasn't it sent all over the world? One of the Ford directors in Detroit back in the 1980s was actually trying to pass through a document that basically stated that Ford would actually try to use Falcons as a replacement for the Crown Victorias and all of the US police cars over there, which, if you could imagine, there are a lot more police over there than probably Australian police that were actually using these cars as police cars. I could imagine Ford Australia probably would have stuck around for a few more years if they had actually started importing their cars for the American police force to actually start using. Unfortunately, during the 1980s and 1990s, that was never passed through. And the American police force ended up just using the Crown Victoria anyway. So unfortunately, that never went through. But I still find it so crazy at the fact that it was never sent anywhere else in the world. And I guess the biggest thing it comes down to is money. So a lot of you guys in other countries may or may not know, but Ford actually do not produce any cars in Australia, along with Holden and along with Toyota, surprisingly. Toyota used to actually make cars in Australia, but now they no longer do. Ford completely ceased all operations of building and distributing Falcon sedans, Falcon Utes, and the Ford Territory all throughout Australia. They no longer produce them anywhere else in the world. And that's a really sad thing because these cars were so promising. The biggest thing it comes down to is money. Ford Australia could not keep their costs down as much as what imported car manufacturers were doing. And there's probably another big reason as to why Ford Australia never imported any Falcons or Territories or Falcon Utes to anywhere else in the world apart from New Zealand. In fact, when Ford actually announced their closure when it was going to happen on October 16, they also admitted the fact that they'd lost around $600 million in the last 5 years before they closed. And one of the main reasons because of this is because the Australian government actually created free trading agreements with a lot of other countries. One of the more detrimental agreements that they made was the one that they made with Thailand. Thailand is now the second largest producer in cars behind Japan. And not only that, but pretty much most car brands actually produce out of Thailand because it is more central for complete distribution across the world. So a lot of major car brands you actually think of are actually producing out of Thailand. Now the Ford Falcon and Ford Territory were completely 100% designed and produced in Australia. So going to Thailand and doing all that probably wasn't something that Ford Australia wanted to do. But they just couldn't compete with the quality, the cost, and the general features that were coming out of cars that were produced in Thailand, you know. And put it this way as well. So the average worker on a Ford Australia production line was averaging around about $69,000 AUD a year. Now in comparison to Thailand, they were working at $2 an hour on the production line for big car manufacturers, which is around about $12,000 a year. They were working longer hours, they were working harder, and they were also producing cars that had a larger budget on technology and just basic production costs. And not only that, but they could import into Australia basically completely tax-free, which means that we just couldn't physically compete. The Falcons of the Territories didn't even have Bluetooth until I think it was an option in around about 2008. And even still then, it was for phone calls only. Everything out of Thailand, there was cheaper parts, cheaper labor, and it was basically tax-free to get into Australia. So it completely killed out not only the Ford Falcon, but the Territory, Holden Commodore, and Toyota, which was also producing cars in Australia. Ford Australia completely shut their doors in October in 2016, and they basically, what they did was they replaced the Falcon and the Falcon Ute, the Territory, with American equivalents. So they had the Ford Mustang come in, we have the Ford Everest, I believe, and a few other ones that I don't really know about too much. I don't really follow Ford's new cars at the moment, but all I know is basically the US developed cars came over here and basically just completely took over, and they're actually selling, I think, a lot better than what the Ford Falcon was. And the biggest thing it comes down to was the fact that Australians were just not buying the car. It was too expensive, it lacked technological features that a lot of other brand new cars had. Not only that, warranties were nowhere near as good as, let's say, Kia with their 7-year warranties, or Nissan with their 3 or 5 year warranties, whatever they had at the time. Australia just couldn't keep up. It was becoming too much to make, it was becoming too much to sell. Australians just didn't buy them. And that is another reason why Ford Australia lost $600 million in 5 years. And that is another reason why I believe the Ford Falcon never took off in other places and why it still isn't around today. Well, it is the reason. So, yeah. There you guys have it. Hey guys, so I know this was a completely different video to what I normally do, but I really want to appreciate everyone for sticking through the whole thing, watching the whole video. I really appreciate all the feedback you guys are going to give me down in the comments as well. You guys are absolutely awesome, and a lot of the facts in this video I actually just found off a few articles I found on Google, so I didn't exactly fact check every single thing that was in those articles, but they were pretty reputable sources, so I hope you guys kind of understood or kind of got an idea as to sort of why the Falcon never really took off or never went into other countries. It would have been so cool. It would have been so cool to see the sort of development happen on this engine with aftermarket support if it was sent overseas. Like, imagine if the US or Europe ever got these Barrett engines and they had just as much aftermarket support as they did with the 1JZ, 2JZ, RB25, RB26, RB30, RB20, all those amazing, incredible engines. But hey, you know, the Barrett is kind of like our claim to fame for Australia. It is a rock solid engine, and I'm glad that I have one. And I'm glad that I can tell my kids one day that I had a cool car. Maybe, I don't know, we'll see. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.